Well, hello again. We're back for the 72nd installment of Three Old Friends, The Music Never Ends. And when I say a number like that, I'm just want to point out I'm not tired of it. I love it. I hope we do 172. It just amazes me that I didn't think this is where we would be, that we would have, but it's great that we're doing this. So anyway, that aside, our latest, I'm Mike and my great friends Jose and Dave are here. So this time we've done some playlists about bass players. We did keyboardists. We did brass a while back. Am I forgetting something?
Guitar.
Guitarists, guitar. Yeah, I could forget that. This time it's drummers. So we just basically it pretty is what it sounds like. But we picked out some of our favorite drummers. Maybe not they're not all like doing solos, but we'll get all into that. So I'll just start right off. I went with The Who first, and Won't Get Fooled Again. And if you surely everybody in the world now knows that Keith Moon was a drummer for The Who, and he had some issues. People looked at him as a kind of a comical figure, just a madman because he did so many crazy things. I heard like they got banned from the Who Holiday Inn and all across the United States because at this one, I think it was his birthday and he got wasted. I think he drove a car into the pool. Well, that might have been a different time. He maybe jumped face first into an empty pool, but he was famous for wrecking hotel rooms, his incredible capacity for intake of all kinds of substances, and somehow was able to survive until he didn't. I don't want to spend too much more time on that, because it is what it is. He clearly had some issues, but he was a brilliant drummer. This song, Won't Get Fooled Again, is the last track on Who's Next, which I don't know, it's one of their stronger albums, I think. I mean, it comes after Tommy, and I forget what's next. Is Quadrophenia next? I forget, but there's some really strong albums in there. But this one, it was intended to be another like rock opera or some kind of concept project, but it just kind of fell apart. It was going to be called Lifehouse, but they had these great songs, and the playing was just so superior. The producer's like, well, why don't you put an album of this out? And it's just real tight. And there's other stuff like Behind Blue Eyes. I'm gonna Going Mobile. I think My Wife is on there, but other well-known songs too. And so this one, it's a longer song. It's You can look up what it's about if one of you guys want to talk about it. But the drumming, the reason I picked this one is just it really shows off his style. He wasn't a lot of his stuff. He was like playing fill through the drum fills through like big chunks of the song rather than the rhythm. But he would do the rhythm too, and in this one you can really hear it. He just dives right into it. He just crashes into it, and it's throughout the song like this. He There's some other song like The Real Me we put on a couple of playlists ago. If I hadn't used that for the bass player John Entwistle, that's a great example. He just flings himself on those drums. There's a song that I used before too. I was almost did that now, but then I remembered I used it. Was Beck's Bolero, Jeff Beck, and it's an instrumental. It's a bolero, kind of inspired by the famous piece of classical music. But there's a part where like it's quiet, and you hear this scream, and somebody just pounces on the drums and just like explodes on the drums. That's Keith Moon screaming. He played on that track. He played on a lot of other people's things, but I've been a lifelong Who fan. I think it was one of the first bands I really got into after the Beatles that I was kind of fanatical about. So I don't know what else to say. What do you guys think?
Well, I was kind of a latecomer to the Who, probably more in the early 80s when I was in, high school, started getting into them. A lot of it was because Jose was turned me on to some of it. but really it was the new music they had in that time frame too, like 82 to 85 time frame or whatever, 81 to 85. So that was past the Keith Moon era, right? I mean, I really didn't start with that, but then as I started going back and exploring more of the older Who stuff, then it's like, oh, here's this Keith Moon guy. And then I have to admit, back in the day, I probably didn't really know a whole lot, even when he passed away, other than maybe reading an article in Rolling Stone or something like that about him. It wasn't probably until, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago where I probably saw a documentary on it and on one of the things and went, oh wow, this was what he was really about, and how crazy he was and how out there he was, and but yet how brilliant he was as a drummer. So I kind of learned that much later in life. I didn't really follow him when he passed away and when he was doing all that, but I learned it through the documentary kind of thing. And yeah, I got to almost put him on this list. I'm a big Who fan now, but I've never seen him. I've never gone in concert to see him. And but yeah, great way to lead off the playlist for sure.
Yeah, I think about that. I don't know why you didn't go with me that in '82 that one year. We'll never know.
That was stupid, and there were lots of times. Same thing with AC/DC. I was stupid.
'84, yeah.
That '82 tour was the first time I saw him too. The drummer was Kenny Jones then.
Right, and yeah, it was great to see him. But of course, it really, and we talked about this before. Without Keith Moon, it's a little different. I mean, I think Keith Moon was, definitely the soul of the band. He was, he was bombastic. It's a shame that sometimes, and we're all guilty of it, his lifestyle overshadows what his real contribution was to rock and roll. And how he played and what he did behind the kid and what he came up with. I mean, I think Tommy's the album is his best, but of course this album is a classic album, and I think Keith Moon is probably in the top 5 for me, definitely for sure, as a rock and roll drummers. I have read his biography, like you said, it's filled with, and then of course we always get the what ifs, if he would have, what would have the Who done? They could have done so much more. So anyway, I just think it's a great choice. It's a great choice to start. Although Who's Next, which is a great album, but here's just a side note that's completely off topic, but I never knew anything. Do you know the story behind that monolith on the cover?
I do, but go ahead.
Kubrick and the monolith. Anyway, I never heard that till recently. I was watching a Kubrick documentary. Regardless, let's move on to my choice.
You can tell the story if you want.
What's that?
You can tell the story if you want. I know.
Yeah,
tell a little bit.
Like Space Oddity or something like Odyssey or something like that.
It's related to, I forget why they were mad at him, but
Yeah.
they had just urinated on this monolith thing, and
Uh,
an insult to him after he did something that made him mad. I don't know.
That's the whole thing. Anyway, it's a crazy story. But I went with Ginger Baker. Ginger Baker is one of my favorite drummers, and he was one of the early drummers that I got. One of the first rock albums that I owned was we went to Denver to go on some ski trip, and we had to stay in Denver with my stepmother's friends. And she had a bunch of old albums like Cream, like Disraeli's Gears, and some Deep Purple, and she gave them to me. And I had that was my first introduction to Ginger Baker with Cream. So, and from there, of course, I think just think so. I played, and so it's hard to pick, because he was in a lot of different bands. I even owned he put out an album called Air Force, which he just comprised the band. He made 2 of it. So I was really into him. He was definitely a different kind of dude. So I think but I went with Blind Faith, Sea of Joy, Blind Faith, that super group of theirs. That, of course, who would have thought that all those egos could last more than a year in the same band? But Ginger Baker, there's a great documentary on him. He was kind of a little wacko. He was a little crazy. Not the nicest individual, but he could play the drums for sure. I think he was influential to a lot of drummers. So, I think, and Blind Faith, I think you could probably use all the songs on that album at some point on a playlist. So anyway, my choice.
Yeah, I just want to point out this is the second of four troubled drummers. If I didn't say this, maybe I did. Anyway, yeah, he had his troubles. He and Jack Bruce and Cream. The band only lasted about 2 years, and the animosity between those two was, I think, the main reason they split. They reunited at some point. I read. I mean, Cream did for like a tour, like later in the '90s or early 2000s. It was just a one-off short tour, I think. Maybe it was just a concert. Anyway, I don't know. But Jack Bruce was um, quoted, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but we get along a little better now that we're on two different continents. Although sometimes I think calling him and telling him he's too close. So there was clearly he did have some anger issues. I saw an interview with him on Letterman one time. I'm like, because I think the first time I'd like seen him not behind a drum kit in a video for Cream or something, and he was unusual guy, highly influential, and also he got really into like African music. I think he moved to Nigeria, wherever Fela um, was. If look him up if you don't know who he is, audience members, African musician, and so he did a lot of that kind of stuff. And this album, I love this album. It's funny because I got into Cream and into Traffic earlier, but it wasn't until I went off to college. I think like that first semester in college, there was a radio station that would every week they'd play 6 albums each night, and I record, as many of us did back in the day when they did that. And this is on there, and I had not heard it. I knew, what was it? Can't Find My Way Home. That's like a rock radio station staple, at least back then. Now it's oldies staple, but I was just like blown away by this album. And this song in particular, really, I liked. It just, it kind of has, it still has that traffic kind of psychedelic thing going, and the violin and everything. But I agree with you. You could put about anything on here on a playlist. What was it? Do What You Like might be one to show a little bit of his drum. It's an odd song, but it's might show a little of his drumming. So great choice. I love about everything I've heard that he's played on.
Yeah, I love this song. I think it's other than "Can't Find My Way Home," probably my favorite. And it wasn't because I own the album; it was because I think we put every song on a mixtape at some point in the past or something. That's where I was exposed to it. But I know this one was on one. Can't name it. Jose will probably go, "Oh, that was this one," but I can't remember. But anyway, I remember it was on one, and that's where I listened to it a lot. And I don't know a lot about Ginger Baker either. Like you said, trouble drummers. We kind of have a theme going here. So from that point, I knew that both of them were kind of in that same mix. So I said, all right, well, let me find another guy who died too early or whatever, and thought, well, John Bonham of Led Zeppelin would probably be a good choice. From there, I just scrolled through a lot of the library and the catalog, trying to look for a song, and there were a lot of choices. In fact, the one I think I was going to go with first was, and again, I'm not a Led Zeppelin and aficionado, like I know every album and song or anything, but he did have a song that was a drum solo called Moby Dick. If you're familiar with that one, and I wasn't, but I listened to it in preparation for this, and I'm like, dang, that's good. But I didn't know if I wanted to do just a drum solo, because I hate to say it, drum solos are great, but they get old, man. After about 2 minutes, you're like, come on, move on. If they go longer than that, and this was like about 3.5 minutes or whatever, so it wasn't too long. But I've seen some pretty long ones, and so I've tried to find a song that was maybe shorter, that really showcased the energy that John Bonham had, and came across "Immigrant Song," and everyone knows that one, Um, uh, but I found a live version of it, which was kind of cool. So it really had that energy to it. Um, it was kind of resurrected in School of Rock, right? When Jack Black started, he was driving the van. He's like, and he's doing all that.
It's also in Marvel movie, Thor movie.
Right.
He's a big
It's in I
fan.
think Shrek 2 as well. There's a
Yeah,
scene where all the
Right.
creatures attack the villain, and
I
that's
remember, yeah. Right.
yeah.
So it's a well
uh,
known, it's been popularized, and so I thought I would go with that song. And I hadn't heard the live version of it, and so threw it on and thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny that it's kind of the when we were going through this. And first of all, let's say some people that might think we're blasphemous that John Bonham is at the top of the list, but as we discussed before, I guess none of us were really Led Zeppelinites like other people who are totally worship Led Zeppelin, which I get, and you can understand, especially John Bonham, of course. I mean, he probably should be at the top. He's at the top of a lot of people's list, and his music is great. It's not on top of our list for whatever reason, but it's when I was doing the same thing, Dave, and of course, obviously, you put them on the list. You start going, so which song should I use? You know, Kashmir, Misty Mountain. You start going through all of them, and
Dancing in the dance, was it the rain song, or which one is
right,
that?
down, Fool in the Rain,
Pull in the Rain. I
right,
remember saying the way his calypso beat on that was like really good.
Flyer Maker, just all, it's just he's just incredible. So yeah, obviously, like I said, he's probably in the top three. Again, you can't go wrong with John Bonham, that's for sure. And again, he's another one of those crazy drummers who died too early and probably rivaled Keith Moon in the craziness. And both of them at times were together, which I can only imagine what people like at some point. So
yeah, pretty crazy. So I went through a Zeppelin phase where I definitely was into them quite a bit, but after that, it's kind of faded off. I get it, and I like it. This album that this is originally off, I think Zeppelin 3. It's I bought that at a half price books, and I was like, I was instantly like, oh man, there was something about that record that's like every song on there got, not a lot of them got airplay. A couple of them did, um, but in this song, yeah, this I remember this when I was a kid. It'd be playing on. My mom listened to a lot of FM radio when I was young, and would be in the car. And that comes up again and again on these playlists. And I remember that song, and that was kind of, I think, one of my favorites. If I hadn't heard anything else by them, I really liked this song at the time. I Moby Dick, yeah, that's what I was thinking maybe, but I get the drum solo thing. If you've ever seen Song Remains the Same, I think it's significantly longer in that movie, which I went to see at a midnight movie, and that's kind of what got me really into him. But anyway, great choice again. He drank himself to death in short order, and it was a big loss. That basically killed the band. So, but they did have
I
something.
think I think Dave brought up a great point. And it's something that drum solos, and when we go to concerts, you people when you tell someone on a tape, listen to this drum solo. Of course, you're not gonna like it because you're not in that moment. When you're in the moment at a concert, because especially if it's 2 minutes, but I've been Grateful Dead, and maybe you make the list. They have a drum section, and if you're into that moment and you ride that journey, it can be a great experience. And some other drum solos from other drummers, but when you're in the moment. But of course, like you said, Dave, if we put a tape of nothing but drum solos on, I don't think they would people. I don't think I'd even listen to that. So anyway, sorry about that. Off my soapbox. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Actually, I got to second what you said. I agree with that because I didn't really get drum solos until I was in a concert, probably Rush, where I think YYZ. I put that on live with solo included, a previous thing, but it's a yeah. I mean, when you can feel it. You feel that rhythm, vibrating literally from the sound. It's a different thing than trying to sit down and. I had a friend once who's like, didn't get live albums. It's like, it doesn't really capture what you're experiencing. And I get that, but I agree. I went so our fourth song is Harry Nilsson, Jump Into the Fire. It's off Nilsson Schmilsson, which is an album I dearly love. It's an unusual song for him. Well, it's an unusual song, period. But it's unusual for this album and for a lot of what he does because his stuff is very melodic, more subdued, primarily features piano or acoustic guitar or even, classical instruments, whatever. He's known as a songwriter, carefully crafted songs, kind of sly humor, dark humor, whatever. This song, so I knew I had this. First, I heard so Jump Into the Fire. Well, I should say, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out. Say the name of the drummer, and I know him well. Oh my God, Gordon, Jim Gordon.
Jim Gordon.
It's not that he's not important. It's just, yeah, that's me. Jim Gordon plays on this, and I'll get back to him in a second. When I was a kid, and another one of those FM radio things, I just remember a specific time we were driving somewhere at night. It was dark. I think it was a long trip somewhere, and this song came on, and it was just like I was like transfixed by it. It was scary to me as a kid. I'm like, what is this? And it's just one long song. There's not a chorus really, I guess. It's, I think, in one chord basically. And it's Nilsson is screaming out his parts. I couldn't even really tell you 100% what it's about. It's very electric, very rocky, which is different for him. And then it has this kind of extended, I guess this is a drum solo, right? Extended kind of tribal drum part at the end. And it's just gonna find something here real quick. And that's all Jim Gordon. They just let him kind of do this thing and then kind of fade out. And it's just a crazy song. If you've seen Goodfellas, it plays a very prominent role in that. If you have seen it, it's the scene with the helicopter. There's a couple other great songs in there. So yeah, Jim Gordon was the drummer. He had lots of problems. He was schizophrenic and spent the rest of his life after the early 80s when he killed his mom in prison or mental wards in prison. But he just played on everybody's record. And I looked up a few of them here. He was part of this group, part of the time, the Wrecking Crew. And he was kind of the protege of another drummer, Hal Blaine, who will make it on this list a little bit later. But he played on, let's see, I'll just give you a few. He played on the song Diamonds and Rust by Joan Baez. He played on Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. The Pretender by Jackson Browne, I think the album The Pretender. Jack Bruce solo, we mentioned him. Glenn Campbell, the song Wichita Lineman, which if I get started talking about that, I never shut up. I love that song. The Carpenters, Eric Clapton's first album, I believe, or first or second, Joe Cocker, Mad Dogs and Englishmen, Burton Cummings, Derek and the Dominoes, Art Garfunkel, Hall & Oates. He played several of Animal's parts in the Muppet movie. John Lennon, Power of the People, the drums in that. They may go on and on. Yeah, it seemed like there was one more I was going to mention. He played on Pretzel Logic by Steely Dan. We'll get to Tom Waits and Zappa, many others. Anyway, so yeah, he definitely had his credentials as a drummer. He contributed so much to these songs. It is a real tragedy what happened to him. He's also, I'm sorry, some people credit him with writing the instrumental part at the end of Layla. Bobby Whitlock, I read, disputes that, said it was actually somebody else. I'm blanking out. But anyway, go ahead.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there, man. I didn't.
Sorry.
No, that's good. I mean, I learned and get educated from both of you. on this because I did not know, and but that makes his body of work even that much more impressive. I love when you get a studio musician that has had that kind of notoriety and have played on so many different bands and albums and artists and kind of like when I put on Leyland Sklar when he was a bass player, he did this a similar kind of thing. But those people are underappreciated, and so it's nice that you're recognizing them and saying, "Hey, this is one of the greatest drummers," because look at what they've done, their body of work. It's not just that they were, you know, the the drummer for Led Zeppelin, which is important. Yeah, it's great, you know, so for those albums, but for the longevity and the span of all the different genres that they did, that's just wholly impressive. So, oh, and I do like the song. I think I like more Nilsson. I didn't. I you know I've heard a lot of his music, and I think at one point I probably bought Nilsson Schmilsson from Apple Records or something later on and had that. So yeah, good choice. I like I like his music. I like the how different it is, how quirky it is, how acoustic it is at times. So yeah, really, we'll have to look for some more from more Nilsson. Maybe that coconut song or whatever.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Has that ever made plans?
I know that. I mean, hung out with all the big. Didn't he hang out with Ringo Starr? Yeah, he hung out with everybody. I mean, the guy was
Keith
just,
Moon. He hung out with Keith
And a
Moon.
guy who could pull off an album cover where he's in his bathrobe. I mean, you got
right. Oh yeah, there's a great documentary out there about him that I watched a couple of years ago, and he's just definitely a different guy. Never hit it big like other people hit it big, but was around all the big people and wrote some of the biggest hits in the world. So, but of course, we're here not to talk about him, but his drummer, who's, I think we talked about the drummer before when he passed away, right? Just recently, we had it.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't bring that up, but you're right. I didn't think to.
So, yeah, no, it's a great choice. And again, I won't get on that soapbox again. Will he ever, should this guy really be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Probably should. But he's just forgotten in the annals. He's not forgotten. People know, and so of course he's on our list, so we know. So and it's a great song, like I said, Goodfellas. I just watched that the other day, and yeah, plays an important role. That movie. What? Not a Rolling Stone song? Come on.
Well, if that same Chase or whatever, I think Monkey Man is in that too, and what's that? I'm a whatever Manish Boy, whatever. There's a few there, but yeah, that's probably one of my favorite scenes in that movie.
That's a great scene. So then I kind of end actually the crazy drummer sequence by going with, of course, one of my favorite drummers, Phil Collins, which is kind of weird to say because a lot of people know Phil Collins for a variety of reasons, but primarily, and he used to say it early on, he was always the drummer first and the singer later, but obviously he's one of the few artists he's one of three artists that's sold 100 million with a group and 100 million as a solo artist. I think it's like Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney or something like that. So anyway, but yeah, and Phil Collins, a lot of people know him for his ballads, and of course, I prefer him as his drumming in Genesis because I think he knew that was his primary role, and even when he decided to take over the vocals with Trick of the Tail. I used the Dance on a Volcano. You can still see he wanted to be part of the drumming, and he really pulls it off in this song, and all of his drumming work, I think, early on especially, was really well, like I said, and we could have easily gone with the most famous drum solo of the time, "In the Air Tonight," with Phil Collins. It's probably the most used drum solo. Again, like the Who song, "Won't People," did CSI ruin that song? Come on, that's all people think about instead of it's one of the greatest rock songs of all time. So anyway, Dance on the Volcano, Phil Collins, just think he's one of the best drummers out there. We've talked about him extensively. This song, especially "Trick of the Tail," like I said, it was a whole new era. Interesting fact, and we'll get to it on a future when they did the tour, they actually brought in Bill Bruford for a while, but he just didn't quite fit in. So that's when they brought in Chester Thompson. So anyway, just a side note.
Yeah, I only saw them once, and it was in the 80s. I'm trying to think what time period. But it was,
The 84 tour, right?
yeah, I don't know, that when a Three Sides Live album came out around that time period. And maybe even 83. Anyway, whatever. And but that even then he had another drummer up there because he now was doing double duty. He was also singing some Peter Gabriel traditionally vocal songs, right? But he would, even though he'd have this other drummer and be up front sometimes, they would get back and they both play at the same time, and that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, in the 80s, especially with the solo career, was it necessarily cool for everybody to mention Phil Collins, because he kind of became such a pop guy, but he knows how to write a song, just like Paul McCartney. You may not like everything he did, but I think just about everything he did is a quality. Well, maybe not Illegal Alien, but most of his music. The reason I got into Genesis, it wasn't this album, it was what everyone has Turn It On Again. Was that?
Habitat.
Habakkuk.
No, I think it was the album before that because I was thinking that too. It was the one immediately before that, not Duke.
Genesis, Genesis. The black with the uh
The
it's
Mama.
titled. It's not doesn't
No,
matter.
it's before that. Well, anyway, it was, and one of the things I liked about that, well, he does he kind of picked up that
It could have been
heavy, echoey drum thing. You could hear it in other people whenever he played on another musician's song and he was drumming, kind of like after that period, it had that drum. You mentioned The Air Tonight, that kind of sound. I heard a song by Frida, who was a member of ABBA. She had a solo album and he sings back up and then his drumming. It was like, that's Phil Collins. But this album, anyway, I was saying I got into them
oh,
because of that Abacab and Turn It On Again before that, and it was because it was kind of, to me, it was a little more out there from, it was like more. I know now looking at the earlier stuff, it's not, but those interesting rhythms. I couldn't tell you like this song, Dancing on a Volcano. There's like, I don't know what the count is, but it is not something that people normally, a lot of artists do. Maybe King Crimson and whatever, but and they do that all the way back. But this one in particular, this was like my when I was into the Phil Collins Genesis first, and then went later, and Peter Gabriel. This is like a kind of the transition going backwards because it still has some of that kind of sound like when Peter Gabriel. He could have been singing some of these songs. How if he was the one that was behind those rhythms, it was a group thing. If Tony Banks helped write it, I don't know, but I'm really curious because that's one of the things I love about his music is that.
these were leftover songs that they had left over. They did work on Lamb Lies, but there was always leftover songs that they had left over that when he was still in the band. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's it. No, that's it. And he has that San Antonio connection with all the Alamo stuff. I still haven't seen that, but all that stuff he donated to the Alamo folks, and apparently it's in a building behind the Alamo or something. Got to check it out one of these days.
Well, Phil Collins, he's an iconic drummer. You mentioned all the other things. I had on my short list In the Air Tonight too because of that iconic drum solo or the what catches you on that. I've said it before. I like prog rock. I wasn't super like into Genesis as much as Jose and Mike was, but I've listened to a fair amount of it over the years and really appreciate it. Yeah, and the time signatures and the syncopations and the different things that they do, it's amazing. And a lot of times you just focus on the vocal or the song. This gives us that opportunity to focus on the instrument. So I think all of us were when we were listening to these tracks, we're going, oh, okay, let me hone in on the drum part, the drum piece of that, and that's what really highlights it. I've seen different things where they break down or strip down a song or whatever, and they have the mixing board, and you can isolate certain things on the track, and um, you hear things that you wouldn't hear in the normal song a lot of times. So again, love Phil Collins. I also like drummers that sing, and I didn't think about this, but probably could have done a whole playlist of drummers that that are also lead vocalists. One that I didn't put on the list, we'll probably talk about later, but it was Don Henley. I was thinking about putting on something by Don Henley, even though he's not at Flash and doing all the stuff. But the fact that you're playing the drums and you're singing at the same time, to me, that's pretty special. That's not easy to do. People will tell you. Otherwise, we'd have a lot more drummers that sing. Why do we not have a lot more drummers that sing? Because they can't. Because it's hard to play and sing. And, some of them do some background vocals and different things like that, but it's hard to be the lead on that. Anyway, so good choice. I like this song. This has always been one of my favorites as well. From there, I don't know. I didn't pick the player. I didn't pick the drummer. I just said, I'm looking for something. We did some hard rock already. We did that. And I was thinking, man, what do I like? Well, I like that 70s sound, I don't know what you call it, because everyone they have to tune their drums. They have to do different things, and they have different signature things that they do. But in the 70s, that real powerful, that sound that were in a lot of rock songs, right? I always just love that. So I thought of Bad Company. I thought of I don't know, just several others that I thought, oh, I could Foreigner even. I could have picked some group that had a lot of that beat in it. Triumph was one that I had thought, and then I remembered this group called Moxie, which was a Canadian trio, which is three-piece band in the 70s, and I don't know, they had a couple of albums, but their first album, Moxie, had probably 4 or 5 really great songs that I used to love a lot. And one of them was called Sail On, Sail Away. You know me, I'm a sucker for a little acoustic, a little get going like that. And it's kind of going, rise up in the morning. It's like almost like Boston or something. It says, yeah, this is nice, little acoustic thing. And then it's like, then they, they just get into it, right? And I love that. I love that thing. I used to, I don't know, headbang on my way to school listening to Moxie, that kind of thing. So I figured at some point I needed to get him on here, and the drummer was the time. Now the drummer's name is Bill Wade. Again, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup or tell you who he was, but I put it on there because of that sound that's distinct of the 70s rock groups.
Yeah, this had to be the surprise of the playlist by far. Maybe despite of all playlists, maybe not other than the street. But the crazy thing is, I understand it. I completely understand it because I grew up in San Antonio, and if you listen to 99.5 Kiss, there was Joel Anthony, and he pushed certain groups. He pushed in this kind of music, like Dave said, Triumph, and who opened for Triumph? April Wine. They were popular around here, and they had that distinct sound, that hard rock coupled with the thing. And this is what we'd listen to. You had this album, right, Dave?
I did, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I knew someone though that it's like Moxie on the cover of it, right? Something like that. So anyway, yeah. So completely understanding, like not, I'm not the top 15 drummers that I'm thinking of in the world, but hey, that's what you like. That's what you like. And we've said this before, and there's a song that's coming up, the same thing. You hear it one time on the radio, and you're like, boom, I like that. I like how that sounds. I like that beat, and it just sticks with you. So yeah, I completely understand it.
Yeah, I had not heard of Moxie. I don't think. I grew up in Dallas during this same kind of time period you're talking about. And I'm sure they got some play there, but they didn't have a DJ championing them. But I recognize the sound, things like this. And so I didn't know the song, I didn't know the band, It's like it's kind of gotten stuck in my head, and not in a bad way. It's like the other day I just kind of just like you're just I don't know about you guys, but songs will just pop in my head, and I can hear the whole song in my head. And this one keeps just coming back, which is a lot better than some songs that I get stuck with some days. But it's great. I will, and I guess maybe because I'm you know, a newbie to these guys. Um, but I really felt like I could hear some Rush in there.
Oh, cool.
And when you said they're a Canadian trio, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I mean they were maybe a little before, well, or maybe simultaneous with early Rush. But and then also Zeppelin. I could hear some Zeppelin to it. In fact, there's a uh, it just occurred to me one time I was listening to it. It's like the Immigrant Song is that riff, that dun da 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 da. There's a da 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 in this song too. And I'm like, oh, okay. It would have flowed well after Immigrant Song too. But yeah, so you definitely had something that kind of vibe going through your head between your last song and this song, I think, Dave. But great choice. I couldn't tell you anything about the drummer. And I'm gonna have to. I haven't heard any of their other stuff since we did this, but I'm kind of curious now if I would recognize them from. I listened to a lot of album-oriented rock back in the day on there were two stations in Dallas that really specialized in that. So I bet they played this kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you for introducing me to them. So I went kind of zigzagged here, whatever. So I went with the Police. I think it's their second album. Is it Regata de Blanc or what is it? Here, I have it here somewhere. There's Moxie. Hang on, Regata de Blanc. Yeah. So this is earlier stuff. If you know the Police. Uh, Most people are probably more familiar with Every Breath You Take, and maybe Roxanne, of course, was early. But their earlier stuff was more driving, maybe more kind of reggae, more punkish kind of stuff. And this song is No Time This Time, which is the last song on this album. Drummer Stuart Copeland. And I think they only did 5 albums, 4 or 5. Let's see. Yeah, 5, I think. Anyway, I'm particular, uh, I really like their early albums, probably more than even Ghost in the Machine or Synchronicity, which kind of was their big, last album that got so much airplay. But this song, I think it just drives from the beginning. He's just doing, I couldn't tell you what those are, but it's kind of like the Keith Moon thing, except there's more discipline to it. It's just kind of like drum roll, but I don't know what you call it. And the whole song is like that. It would They would not have been the Police without this guy doing this rhythm. He's really influenced by some jazz stuff, so a lot of African and reggae stuff. And there's a lot of videos online of him talking about his inspiration for these songs, and he'll show you kind of how he would do them. And it's just watching him is like, wow, that guy really his drumming is tight, even to this day. The only other thing we're about him, I was reading this and I didn't realize this on Wikipedia. Both his parents were spies, and his dad was actually he was, I guess, the sole American of the Police, and they were both in the CIA. His dad was the OSS that became the CIA, and he was like one of the first generation of the CIA and was involved in some major things. So it's just interesting when you hear people's connections to things. But I'm curious what you guys think. Not everybody likes the Police, but I just think that his drumming, if nothing else, really carried that band. Sting, and whatever. The guitarist is great too, Andy Summers. But I know his name, Andy Summers. I'm gonna say it, but yeah, the drumming, yeah.
I don't know if I didn't get that into the Police or whatever, but I've always liked them. And I'm glad you put on something because the rhythms and the drums throughout their career are just amazing. And there's so many times where you can just forget that he's the way he's playing, but if you focus in on it, you're like, oh this guy is incredible, you know. So I like a lot of the stuff from the Police, and I wonder though. I mean, I'm not sure the history of why they actually broke up. I know they had some issue. Maybe you guys could enlighten me on that. But I wonder if what if Sting continued to play and for 20 more years and 15 more albums, what they would have done, or is that just not
They
not
hate
gonna
each other's guts. There's a
what
time
happened?
they hate
Money?
each other. They hate each other. They
They,
literally fight. They hate each other so much. They did that reunion tour and then they couldn't even stand themselves then, and they hate each other. It's just a hate. Sting and Andy Summers and Stuart, they do not get along at all. Yet they produce this great music, but yeah, there's documentaries out there, and there's a documentary Stuart Copeland does, right? And it's supposed to be about, and you see a little behind the scenes of them just like, yeah, they are not friendly to each other at all.
I think that animosity may have been part of what drove their music because they weren't relaxing around each other, and there was resentment. And you could
Yeah.
tell. I saw them one time, the Synchronicity tour, and yeah, they weren't, I don't think they ever did any banter at all. So, but I knew
so like
about that with them.
so like the opposite of Rush, right? Where they're just
Wow, completely.
just
Yeah, they did not. Not that Rush didn't have any fights, but yeah, no, nothing like that. They were just three guys who were great at what they did, but after a while they just couldn't stay. That's why then Sting left, and then yeah, Stuart Copeland. So yeah, it's a shame. And then they did try that reunion thing, and it just was like abject failure. Just did not like each other. So. And to your point, Dave, we grew up in that era, and I've talked about it extensively. We used to go to that one guy who just played the crap out of the Police, but he was way ahead of us because it took. I'm like you, Dave, like you with Genesis. It took me a while to. I just discard. We just kind of like, oh, the Police. It's that. It's Synchronicity, and it's all that. And so, you just kind of you didn't realize what great music was really coming. And so when Stuart Copeland, and I know you guys are going to love me for this, when him and Trey Anastasia from Phish and Les Claypool from Primus put a band together, like these are the three weirdest guys to put a band together, but they were, especially for Phish fans, they were fantastic, and Stuart Copeland also is like, okay, I missed the boat on this. So I think I once went to Half Price and bought like Mike said, their first three albums and their first live album before they, were big and great stuff. So
We've had that band you mentioned, the Oysterhead. I'm sure you remember you put Mr. Oysterhead on one time, and I had no idea who was in that band until and I'm like, really? How did I not know about these guys?
They've only done a couple of tours. They did one album. They've toured only twice, I think, in their existence. Like in 01 and then like 2015, they did like a little reunion thing. They've only done like six shows or 8 shows together, so it's weird. So anyway, from there, I went back to I thought about this as we were talking, and it's interesting that Dave was the one who turned me on to Yes and had Yes, but didn't have as much Genesis, but then also kind of turned me on to Genesis, but Yes was kind of his primary focus. And well, I veered off to this. Yes was really my introduction to prog rock, and of course, all the albums, and once you get in, of course, it's Bill Bruford, and I picked Perpetual Change, off the Yes album. Bill Bruford is probably one of the godfathers of prog rock drumming. He's been on a lot of stuff, being in King Crimson, sometimes a little difficult to work with. I mentioned earlier. He was brought on for Genesis, and I thought, well, maybe he can, help out. But then he started doing his own thing. And some of the shows are like, because like you said, Mike, they had that dual drumming, or they'd be doing something, and he's supposed to kind of follow the script, and he didn't follow the script. And like, what is he doing? So they kind of like, you don't have to be part of the Genesis anymore. So, but there's a video out there of him playing with Genesis. So anyway, So anyway, obviously, Yes is one of the greatest bands in the world, or for if that's how you feel about it. And Bill Bruford was a part of it, Close to the Edge, part of my existence for a long time. So one of the reasons I picked it.
Yeah, I love this album. Other than Fragile or um, well, a couple other albums, but this is probably the one I listen to the most. And this song is great because it's perpetual change. That's how the song goes. There's a message related to that in the lyrics, but then there's the song changes different kinds. Like there's a waltz in there. There's this jazzy, guitar part. This is like upbeat kind of keyboardy prog rock thing, and it's just like it's awesome. And they've got to change the rhythms on all these sections. I don't know how often they played it live, but it would have been interesting to see them do that on stage. Because, in a studio, you can work these parts. I don't know if they did or didn't. You can record them and then kind of put them together, maybe link them. So I'm really kind of curious if they did that. And Bill Bruford, yeah, I mean he's right there with it. He's a great drummer, and he also King Crimson. He was a major role there. So he's still out there. Every once in a while, I like follow Tony Levin and Adrian Belew. I think both on Facebook, and they'll do these like, well, there's the Beat Tour, King Crimson kind of refugees or whatever, and then there's this band, the Stickmen, and all these different things. But they keep going these cruises, or they'll be here or there, and they'll keep running into each other. There'll be like all these photos of Tony Levin, Bill Bruford, Adrian Belew, like in the last, few months. So they're still out
Well,
there doing the thing. So it's nice to hear he's still doing. I've never had a chance to see him live, so it'd be
he,
nice.
he said he retired about 3 or 4 years ago, but now unretired. He's part of this trio, some small trio that he works with. So, just throwing that.
But great choice. I love this song.
Okay, so I got a little bit of confessioning to make on this song. Um, had this album, love the album, love Yes, listened to it many, many, many times. But and so I'm familiar with the song, especially when I heard it again after, I don't know, might have been 30, 40 years since I've heard the song. It's been a long time. So it was new and fresh. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's that song, and how it builds on it and has different parts, and then you have the vocals, and then all of that. But I have to say that I probably wasn't as familiar with this song as I should be, and that's my confession. And I'm wondering why. And so I looked at the tracks on it, and I'm thinking, so when you listen to an album, right, back in the day, did you start with track 4 on the B side? No, you would put on side 1, track 1, and you'd play it. Now, if you had enough time, you listen to that one, you'd flip it over, and then you listen to side B, right? But you got to have some time to listen to the whole album. And it's probably a situation where that song just got skipped for whatever reason more often than not, because it's on the B side, and you got Your Move, All Good People, you got that. And then there were probably times where I went, oh, I'm too busy, I got to go do something else or whatever, and then took the needle off or did whatever I did. I'm not kind of making an excuse, but I probably didn't listen to that song as much as Yours Is No Disgrace and Starship Trooper and all the other songs, because of the where it was on the album. And so now that you put it on, it was like, oh yeah, now I've heard it, I don't know, 5, 10, 12, whatever number of times, right? But not the number of times I've heard the other songs, right? So it was kind of cool to hear it and go, wow, that's a great track. I love that song. Um,
Well,
and
I think another factor would be that if it did make one of our tapes, and all the other songs
I
did,
don't think it ever did.
and I don't think this song ever did because it was a little longer. It
Yeah.
kind of never really fit into any of our playlists. So
That's so weird. It seems like a natural. I could just see one of you guys doing it because of the theme of change, because you're going from one song, and we didn't always agree, about one song to the next. It's like
I don't think it ever made it one of our
That's
toys.
wild. I would have thought so, but I mean, not during my.
And we use a lot of yes.
Right. So again, thanks for putting it on and making me remember how great it is, and even Bill Bruford. I like Alan White too. I like, the stuff that they did later on with him, and he has some really. I thought about putting something on by Alan White, but didn't. So big Yes fan, and so I'm glad that you put it on. It fit real well too in the playlist where it was the order and after the police. It went well, and then from there, I did, I wasn't sure where I was going to go at this point. I was probably just picking songs that I liked, not necessarily knowing the drummers and who was doing what, but I just remember the intro to 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon. I was a very impressionable kid during that period of time when that song came out, top 40 kind of thing, so memorized that song and loved singing it, doing fake karaoke in my bedroom to that one. And but I've always liked that drum beat, and then had to look up that it was a guy named Steve Gadd. Probably couldn't pick him out of a lineup. He's right above my head there, but that's him. And I guess he's again has been with lots of different bands and session musician doing different things. So he's very well known for that. Um, anyway, thought this would be a perfect time to throw that on.
Yeah, y'all.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're next year.
yeah, y'all talk about songs that you heard in the backseat of a car. I distinctly remember one of the first times I heard the song was you. I think we were, and I don't know. I wouldn't think it was our parents, but someone we were traveling with was to Corpus Christi, and for some reason this song came on. You're like, whoa, what's that? What's he saying? And I think we might have heard two or three words. He goes, you know how it was. And back then they play a song like once in an hour. And like they said, it was catchy. And you could try to come up with your own little rhymes. And, of course, now as you got older, you appreciate the song itself and the instrument behind it. And like you said, the drumming behind it. But this was one of those songs that was such a phenomenal hit. And because you could sing along to it. And it was fun to sing those little catchy things like, oh, that's clever. So yeah, I thought it was one of the best choices to make. Like I said, someone who the drummers, we don't know who it is, but has made an impact in your life.
Before Mike jumps in, I want to say I didn't have that many, probably 10 or 15 or whatever, but I had this on a 45. That's how much I liked it on the radio that I went and I said, I don't know if I want to buy the whole Paul Simon album, which is stupid, but I just bought the 45 of this one.
Yeah, I think I got this album years later, but a great choice, and for the drumming, particularly that intro, and Paul Simon. He's had a lot of interesting. He's used a lot of international musicians, but he's had some interesting drummers. I can tell you the Rhythm of the Saints record. I think they were either Brazilian or these Japanese drummers on that song, Impossible Child. But there's other stuff too. And just like it's awesome. Steve Gadd, yeah. So so you were talking about not really knowing who the drummer. I think these guys know where I'm going. Uh, not really knowing who the drummer on a song is. So I did not know. And when we're doing these, I might have been doing something else, and maybe didn't. I knew the songs, I didn't really look it up. And so I had another song coming up that we'll get to. So I use the same drummer later, not realizing again, but whatever. He's good enough. I think he's worth twice. And whatever. It's breaking the rules. What rules? But it's a great song. And Steve Gadd, he has played on a lot of other people's records too. This one also, we talked on the bass guitar, the bass player playlist about certain ones that were on like a ton of different things. And when I mentioned him a few minutes ago, Tony Levin, he played on a number of Paul Simon things. He played on this song too. So that guy, I saw a picture. I'm getting way off topic, but I saw a picture of him at some like late '60s peace rally, and he's got a beard and I'm like, wow, that guy has been around, but he's not a drummer. So I went from that quite a bit different sound. "Be My Baby" by the Ronettes. If you know anything about Phil Spector and his sound, this is the Wallace sound, his way of producing with a lot of echo and just a lot of depth to the sound. Um, this isn't necessarily a song that's been on my turntable or whatever over the years. I appreciate it for what it is, but I didn't really until I started looking into. There's a particular, we're talking about session guys, and I talked about Jim Gordon and this thing, the Wrecking Crew. Well, the guy who was kind of his mentor in the Wrecking Crew was a guy named Hal Blaine. And so Hal Blaine played the drums on this, and other members of the Wrecking Crew also, not really relatedly, they just happened to be there. Sonny and Cher were on singing backing vocals on here. You just never know who's going to show up on a song. But anyway, what it's really not, it's you. I wish I could be playing it now. It has this unique drum intro also. And then there's other things that come in like castanets, or I don't know, tambourine stuff. But that drum part at the beginning apparently has influenced so many other drummers. And I read, let's see, I looked up a little bit here about this song and then the guy. So just to read briefly about this song, um, let's see. So he said, Blaine said, that famous drum intro was an accident. I'm supposed to play the snare on the second beat as well as the fourth, but I dropped a stick. Being the faker I was in those days, I let the mistake in and became, the sound. Soon everybody wanted that beat. And I have heard people talk about it. Apparently, Brian Wilson with the Beach Boys became obsessed with that, to the point that other members in the group later interviews, and his daughter Carney, who was in Wilson Phillips and stuff, talked about he played that like all the time. It drove everybody nuts. But it went on to inform a lot of the stuff he did with the Beach Boys later. So there were others, I can't remember who said he influenced them with just that thing. But I'm going to list now some of the things he played on. I'll keep it brief. Surf City by Jan and Dean. Help Me Rhonda, and frankly, that whole set, Wrecking Crew were on Pet Sounds. If you thought that was just the Beach Boys, it was somebody else. Eve of Destruction, I Got You Babe by Sonny and Cher. The Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man. Strangers in the Night, Frank Sinatra. Let's see, I'll skip a few here. Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel, as well as Mrs. Robinson. Indian Reservation by the Raiders. You remember that? Paul Revere and the Raiders in the early 70s. Half Breed by Cher. Oh, there was one more that, whatever. I Think I Love You by anyway, so yeah, but this is just a
Partridge
short.
Family. He did the Partridge Family.
He played with the Partridge Family. He played Captain and Tennille.
No, no, Dave. No.
I was this close to putting on Partridge Family.
Oh,
Then I found out that the little kid didn't actually play the drums. It was somebody else.
Well, in the studio, I'm sure there was a lot. Okay, you're joking. Okay, never mind. I'm sitting here about to explain to you. I'm going to mansplain the Partridge Family. But he did, and we talk about drummers who sing. He played drums on a couple of Carpenter songs, and Karen Carpenter, she was a drummer and a singer, pretty good singer. If you like that kind of music, I like some of their stuff, and but yeah, she was a drummer. I don't think she drummed and sang a lot, but anyway. So that's it. Hal Blaine from the Wrecking Crew.
Correct, man. Danny Bonaducci, he did play the bass. Right? No, never mind.
He was a drummer, right?
Danny Bonaducci.
Talk about a guy with troubles. No.
Anyway, back to I like the song. This is a great song. I've loved this song for years. It's a great oldies. even if I didn't know who the drummer was, now I know that he's a great session musician and doing all that. But yeah, this is a great song. It's another one of those ones where it's kind of refreshing, where we're not just doing the same kind of song. So Mike goes, "Oh, I think I'll throw on a song by the Ronettes or whatever," you know. And it actually went well after the 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. I don't know if the ending of the song and then the beginning of the next with the drums, it went in real well. So I liked it. I like it where it's out on the playlist. Not sure that the next selection doesn't take us in a zigzag fashion or whatever, but that's okay. That's our prerogative. So yeah, good one. I liked it. That leads to Jose.
Right. No, you guys talk about the influences and what we were raised on, and I, I inherited some 45s, and they would be like Calendar Girl and all of these things. And subconsciously, Neil Sedaka albums and these Ronettes, and even when I lived in Dallas for a while, what was the radio station that just played nothing but oldies? It was on the AM station, you know, but subconsciously, these were the songs that were at least influencing us as what was good music, what was happening, and we didn't even know it. And guys like Hal Blaine were the ones who were, building these foundations. And you know, we hear "Be My Baby," we just think it's one of the great rock and roll songs of all time because that's how we were conditioned. It's like, oh my God, is that listen to that song. And as kids, when you'd listen to it, like you're 8 or 9 years old, and someone would throw it on, oh, look, old timey rock and roll. It's like hearing "Rock Around the Clock," right? Bill Haley and the Comets. It's just one of those things. So,
Yeah.
and like Dave said, you always love it when the little foundation there by Mike to remind us. So, excuse me. From there, I was Good Guy. Oh, I don't know why he's that way down here on this list. Yeah, Neil Peart, and that's not a zag. That's like, why is he not higher on this list for all of us? Because I'm sure all of us were influenced by the Professor. Everyone likes to say that about him, I picked Anthem by Rush. I picked one of the early ones. I always love when groups are about to break it big because they still have that raw energy that they bring to it, and you can see the seeds of what's about to come with Anthem from Neil Peart. And he's just one of the what am I going to say about him that people don't already know? And just one of the most fantastic drummers of all time. Obviously, influence on all of us, as a drummer. That's I think twice I got to see him at the Jam, and then one other time in San Antonio. So, we were talking about it in person when he did a drum solo in person. You were captivated. You were like, "What's this guy doing? What's happening here?" You weren't going like, this is a pee break time. Because people usually use the drum solo for pee. Not with Neil Peart. You're like, what's going on here? So anyway, and just throw it out there. That woman who's replacing with and the set list that they've been putting out, man, I'm almost tempted that I want to go see Rush now. So anyway, thought I put him on there. I to keep him off our list.
I'm the same with you about this tour. I've seen so many other things this year, and I'm like, should I? But I'm really starting to shift. I'm thinking maybe I will, and I'm really intrigued by her play, what I've seen online. But I got to see them, fortunately, one time when he was still alive, obviously, and they hadn't broken up, whatever. And it was, and I did put on the Rush playlist YYZ from Exit Stage Left with that drum solo. And when they saw them, when I saw them, they did play that, or he did that, and it's exactly what you described. You're just enveloped by that, and his drum kit, it was just amazing. He just had so many things. I don't know that I've ever seen as big a drum kit as that. I mean, just everything. And I don't know anything about drums. So, but yeah, this song, I did not know this album. I mean, I knew of it, and Fly By Night. I know that song, and a couple others, but I didn't know this. But this is like his first album with them, right? Is that right, or is it?
Oh no, he had some before, right?
Okay. Well, okay. Well, see, I didn't even know that, but it's very strong early on. He's playing.
Caress of Steel.
What now?
Caress of Steel, I think was before that,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, okay. Either way, it's yeah, well, we've talked a lot of them before in the Rush one. Oh, and I don't see him being low on the list numerically, meaning anything about his standing. In fact, I'm not looking. This is just where they fell. You know, I know I'm not lecturing you, but I think any of these could have been the first song. You know, they're all.
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm just like, I always struggle. There's like, I have my favorites, but I can never put them in any order because at any given time, you know, I'm appreciating this one's thing or that. But I think we had all great drummers on here, and this is a particular favorite of mine.
No, you're all right, Mike. That's the first album he was with them. So
Oh, it was.
yeah,
So early, right? That's
right.
yeah.
I was actually early when they're
Oh,
about
that's right. That's right. Because Fly By Night was like that first
right. The first
single.
kind of like do it. Yeah, I was.
Well, this
Cool.
song, it comes out strong. I mean, it's like it's clearly him when you hear it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's I wasn't like I said, I only knew a couple tracks on this album. I probably had the album, but probably didn't listen to it all that much or whatever. But Fly By Night was always a favorite. Um, so this is a cool song, and you're right. I mean, in the hierarchy of all the drummers, Neil Peart, he's way up there. Um, you mentioned like seeing him in concert, and you know when he does a drum solo, and I don't know, I might have saw him twice. I can't remember. I think maybe I did, but I remember at one of the shows when he started into doing his drums, and maybe not even a drum solo, but just was doing his thing. I got so locked in, like a symbiotic relationship for a part of the concert. I don't know, 10 minutes or whatever, where I'm just like, all I could see was his hands moving and all the things he was doing. The lights just kind of zeroed in on that for 10 minutes. And um, yeah, I remember just going, wow, this guy is the greatest drummer I've ever seen. And really got into a lot of their work. And it'd probably be cool to see Rush now again after all these years, even with is it Annika, what's her last name?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Niles or something, or
Something like that.
something like that. Anyway, I've seen some video of it, and it seems like she's holding her own pretty well, right? You know,
Yeah.
but it's not the same. She can only do so much,
Yeah.
which is again, a testament to her. She's putting her own spin on it as well. But um, no, yeah, I love the track. Uh, from there, I went, you know, with there was a song I always wanted to put on by Elton John, and I probably did use it on a mixtape back in the day or whatever. But it's called Curtains, and it features. And Elton will even say this. There's not that many songs. I mean, Saturday Night's all right for fighting. There's a couple of other songs that kind of feature the drummer a little bit more. But Elton John even said, "Hey, this song features Nigel Olsson." So when I heard that years ago, I thought, yeah, let me listen to that. And it starts really slow with the piano and just him, Elton John singing, and Nigel Olsson doesn't even come in until like after the first minute or minute and a half or whatever it is, and then it's really soft and he doesn't overplay, and he plays in the fills and almost to that perfection. If you really listen to it, his timing and everything is so great. He's not going to step on freaking Elton John, or whatever. He's going to play what he needs to play. But as the song builds, those toms and those deep bass drums keep getting louder, a little bit louder, and a little more complex. And he goes, oh, I'll put in a little do do do, a little bit more of a run here, and it just keeps building to the end where he's just going on, going off and doing more and more. Each time it comes around for that pass, he adds a little bit more to it. And anyway, just a favorite song of mine over the years. I love the melody. I love the song, the lyrics, the Bernie Taupin. But the fact that Nigel Olsson stands out on this is why I wanted to play it.
Right now, stole my thunder there because I was going to say the same thing. When you first start this song, you're like, well, why did he pick this song? No drumming going, well, what's going on? And then, like you said, as it builds up in a, I don't want to say traditional Elton John song, but a bombastic, ending there, he really puts it, puts the added umph on it that it really needs. And I'm sure, obviously, he did that with a lot of Elton John songs, but it's really distinct here. So yeah, it was a great version. But it's funny, you're like, obviously, I know why you put it on, but it is funny when it first starts out. You're like, oh, that's what you're looking for because, as you said, when we make these playlists, that's what we try to focus on. If why did they put this on? What's the drumming like? So yeah, thought it was a great choice.
Yeah, I didn't know this song. I agree. Great choice, particularly this drummer. And this is an example of something you were saying earlier about we know these songs. I think maybe both of you said it, but I recall you, Jose. We like know songs. We heard them for years and years, or these artists or whatever. And it's like they're just it's kind of part of like the drum, like you mentioned Saturday's all right for Saturday night's all right for fighting. Um, I heard it millions of times, probably thousands of times. And but I don't really pick out that drumming. I'm like, Elton's so much the focus of that stuff. And so it kind of in my attention, it gets lost. But when you start looking at that, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, this guy's good. And I had heard of Nigel Olsson. I just didn't I didn't really kind of pay attention. It absolutely is worthy putting on this list. And again, Saturday nights, I think I went back and listened to that after. I'm like, oh man, he's really tearing it up on there too. It's so great choice. I've seen Elton three times. One was in the early '80s, and I don't know if Olson was with him then. And I saw him as
I
just
think he's
him.
been with them for. Yeah, I'm not sure. He's been with their band with Dee Murray and Davy Johnson. Is that what? Yeah, they've been together for longer. But you're right. He might have taken a break and did something with just solo stuff or whatever.
I bet he was with. Is he still alive? Do you know? I don't
I
know.
think so. I think he's still alive.
Well, the only reason I'm asking, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I uh, I saw Elton's like his farewell tour. Well, it's apparently still occasionally he's playing, but Goodbye Yellow Brick Road or for whatever. It was a play on that. And he had like a drummer and a percussionist and this whole setup. But I wonder if that was him playing because it was a great show, great musicianship. So not much else I can add about this. Oh, just my mom had this is another one. My mom had this album. I may have inherited this one, whatever. She it went on to other music and CDs, and I got a bunch of her old records. But I think when I was a kid, the thing that really caught my eye about this was the album cover, which is pretty wild. It's I don't know who did it, but it has some similar qualities. I don't know if you've heard of. I'll probably pronounce it wrong. Hieronymus Bosch. He was like surreal before surrealism. He did this. He did a lot of religious things, and there's this one called Garden of Earthly Delights, and it's like I think a triptych they call it, like three different parts, and like one's heaven, one's hell, or whatever, and it's just like bizarre imagery. And this cover looks a lot like that. So yeah. So thank you for putting it on. I really like this song. So going back to Steve Gadd, who we had on earlier, this is my song with Steve Gadd. Um, I picked Asia by Steely Dan off the album Asia. It's spelled AJA, not ASIA. It's their longest song, I believe, at least up to that point. There may be one or two later, but so I knew their music, and obviously by now it's pretty clear that I've listened to a lot of Steely Dan from what I've put on here. Um, but I didn't really. I think in middle school, maybe early high school. I heard. I kind of started investigating. I got this album, because it had Deacon Blues on it, which I always thought they got a lot of radio play, but I always thought, that was a cool song. And this whole album is like this song. It's just like they go into this jazzy kind of thing, a big shift for them. They bring in a lot more musicians. The production really steps up. In fact, that's kind of why I drove him into a 20-year hiatus, besides the massive drug use, after the next album, was because they were just like, these guys were obsessively producing and overproducing. So this album has a little hint of that, but it's in this song, but it's really, it stands on its own. I think it's just a great album. Oh, and if you didn't know this, Phil Hartman from the old Saturday Night Live, he one of his earlier careers, he designed album covers, and this is one of the album covers he designed. You should look it up because he actually, some albums you would know, but he designed this album cover anyway, or shot the picture, or whatever. All right, so Steve Gadd on this one, he'd played on a lot of stuff. We kind of talked about it, but on this song, it was the first Seeley's that does have a drum solo, although it's during the music, and there's actually two, and he just goes nuts. I mean, he just like lets loose. They're about a verse apart. Song's long; it's like 8 minutes. But when they recorded it, let's see. This again off Wikipedia. Gadd, whose part had designated sections where he had to improvise, took two takes to record this. That was out of two takes. They used one from each take, but they stuck it together. No more. They didn't. And these are guys who are fanatical about producing and re-recording and bringing in, trying out. So it's really impressive to the band. And let's see. Walter Becker, who was one of the two longtime members, talked about how he kind of set it up for Gadd to play on this. He said, we discussed the tune a little bit, and by virtue of his musicianship, he knew just what to do, said Becker. He recalls telling him, just play like hell, and through the part that becomes a saxophone solo. And then one more thing, somebody else who was on that recording, there were a lot of well-known musicians. Who was the sax player? Wayne Shorter, also famous in his own right. A lot of jazz stuff, but he, according to Sweet, who was one of the musicians on there, I think, Gadd's playing was so visually appealing that some of the other players became distracted and had to re-record portions of their parts later because they would get drawn in. So clearly it wasn't done all in one big group thing, but that's no surprise. So anyway, I love this song. To this day, it's still one of my favorite of their songs.
Yeah, it's a great song, and we love the Steely Dan. I guess great minds think alike. We had to put the same guy on, but that's okay. Probably a reason why he slipped in and got two selections there. From what we've already said about him. But this is a great song, and I really like the fact that we finally had an actual drum solo on one of these, and so it was a way cool song, and I enjoyed zeroing in on the drums for the whole length of the track. It really blew me away.
Yeah, we must love that guy. I think that both y'all picked that and we didn't figure it out till like 3 days. Which is hilarious. But no, you just got to think about this guy who, he can do the Paul Simon, he can do the Steely Dan, he can do all these different things, and it's pretty amazing that of these musicians who just get called upon. You're like, hey, come on down, we need you to fill in, or hey, we need you for this, and you're probably number one on a lot of people's phone list, a lot of recording and like, hey, or in a pinch, like, come on down, I have something for you, and then to pull it off, and then the musicians that have the trust. I mean, Paul Simon, and you're working with, like you said, those guys in Steely Dan who probably weren't the easiest to work with most of the time. They could barely work with themselves, much less with other musicians. So, it's just a great choice. I find it hilarious that we pick it twice. I have no problem with it. I think it's, it's something that, hey, this is what we do, so screw it. So speaking of being screw it, I cheated a little. It is John Fishman, but he plays no drums on this part, see? But he does play the vacuum cleaner that's what you hear. He's playing. I thought maybe one of y'all saw that when I saw him, but he tends on this song to play the vacuum cleaner, which is, of course, again something that Fish does. They've done it for a long time. I guess he picked it up from his mom. But in this song, they play the song I didn't know. They'll play it throughout the tours where he'll play the vacuum cleaner, and actually Trey jumps on the drums and plays the drums on occasion. So anyway, just thought I'd do a little trolling there. And plus, I love the song. I think I love when they play they sing a cappella. I think that's just fantastic. They do it. They'll do a little barbershop quartet. They don't do it as much as they used to, but in the '90s, they do play "Hello, My Baby" or "Dem Bones" or something. So anyway, just having fun.
Yeah, the barbershop quartet was one of the first things that I thought of when I heard it. And when the next thing I thought is wait, there's not really much drumming in here. What's going on? And then I looked at the video. Okay, so you had mentioned before when I saw them, he didn't do this. He wears a dress on stage, correct, or what, a muumuu or whatever, which is cool. Gotta admire that. But I saw a video. I went ahead and I put together the YouTube playlist, which will be attached to this video, or before we even had this conversation. And so there's a live performance of him doing that. And I heard it before I saw it. It's not the same show, but I'm sure it's similar. And yes, Trey's on drums, and but when I heard it, I thought there was a theremin. You know what a theremin is? They use like on Good Vibrations. It sounds like it, but he's blowing through the thing, making that sound. I believe
he's playing the vacuum. They do play a theremin, but not when they play that. He's just making sounds through the sucking of the.
Well, he does whatever he does. There's some pretty obscene sounds, but then there's some yeah, it sounds a lot like a theremin. Anyway, it's interesting. It's kind of a shame. Hopefully, I'll see him again, and maybe he'll break out the vacuum cleaner. Do you know what brand he prefers?
Yeah, of course. There's a whole history. He used the same a 1955 Electrolux. Again, those are things that only Fish fans, fall in love with because we're idiots. But yeah, this is specific vacuum cleaner he uses that his mother used to use. It's a whole issue. So anyway,
I would have thought he'd be a Hoover man myself, but
I even saw
who knows?
Sphere. I saw him catch it at the Sphere. I've seen him do it like 6 or 7 times. So yeah,
To say he sucks is an understatement,
they even make fun of it. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, sucks to blow. When I saw him on their New Year's Eve show, it was built all around him getting stuck on the vacuum cleaner, like suck to blow, suck to blow. So they even make fun of it. And so anyway, yeah.
It's an interesting song, and I like the barbershop harmony as well. I've always liked that. So yeah, it was weird. It was a little different, but same kind of thing. Where's the drums again? But once you figure it out, it works. So from there, I went with one last song to go, and kind of like I was all over the place with some hard rock, and then some top 40 kind of stuff and different things, and the last thing I put on, I don't know why this song jumped out at me, but Fleetwood Mac, Mick Fleetwood, he's a good drummer. It's not like you just go, oh, he's one of the greatest drummers of all time. But on this one song, Go Your Own Way, I've always been fascinated by the syncopation and the rhythm that he presents in this song, which is not ordinary. If you know anything about when they get to the chorus, he's just maybe playing a regular kind of 4/4 beat. But before that, he's doing all kinds of weird stuff, in there, and it works. And I think it's just a great song. If you really focus on the drums, especially at the beginning of the song, it's like, whoa, that is cool. So that's a song I've always liked, and so I thought I'd throw that out. But the other one maybe was like Tusk or something like that. But this is one where I think it really showcases Mick Fleetwood.
Yeah, I'm glad Great Minds think like you learn the drumming of this song in the first 30 seconds of this song. It's like dun, 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 and then dun, 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 dun. It's within the encapsulated within the first 30, and it just follows that similar pattern throughout. Again, as he adds his different fills and stuff, but you learn everything about that song within the first 30 seconds. I realized that when I was walking this morning, I was like, oh, that's right. He follows this similar pattern. Nothing fancy, but driving, that captures the essence of the song. So yeah, I thought it was a great choice. Again, you don't think it was Mick Fleetwood like, oh my God, he's Buddy Rich, back there. So but yeah, I thought it was a good choice. And I was finding an interesting study about that.
I think from what I've heard about his kind of disposition, he's probably a lot nicer than Buddy Rich was. We should have put somebody. If we hadn't repeated Steve Gadd, maybe I could have put somebody Rich on. There's some stories out there, but anyway, yeah. So Fleetwood Mac wouldn't have been Fleetwood Mac without Mick Fleetwood. I mean, obviously he's in the name. He's on many of the album covers. He's you hear a song like this that you've probably heard many, many times. You maybe, at some point it's just like it's that song. It's like the sum of its parts. If you're not if you're just hearing it, you're not really actively listening to it. And honestly, everything off Rumors at this point I've heard so many times that only now am I kind of coming back around, really starting to appreciate them more, besides the massive airplay hits that they were. Um, but there's a reason for that. It's like all these parts came together to make this thing, and he's like a big part of that, a huge part of it. And also, I think it shows, his drumming shows even more if you get past like the stuff that made it on the radio. There are so many songs with really interesting rhythm on those. You mentioned Tusk, but there's plenty of others too on their albums, kind of, the deeper tracks. I do love this album. I love the album Tusk. And but even their earlier stuff, he was there from the beginning. So what was I gonna say? Um, Oh, I saw a live video, or I've seen a few. I've never saw them in concert. And I guess, I'm not sure if they'll ever get back now. Probably not. They're not all alive anymore. But the footage I've seen them, he's so interesting to watch. He's very expressive. His face, he's like his mouth's open and it looks like he's screaming. He's like into what he is doing. You see that with a lot of drummers. Keith Moon did that, and I'm sure all these guys we mentioned. But yeah, so good choice there too. I think it's a great one to end on. It didn't, honestly, he didn't occur to me, and I'm really surprised because I do really admire him as a musician. One thing, so kind of wrapping this up, one thing we usually do, and I just kind of had a brain fart and didn't, is kind of talk about what did we think of this playlist before we delve into it. So maybe we can talk a little bit, at the end, beyond just like the specific things. What did you guys think about doing focusing on drummers, and kind of how we're doing it with these? We still, I guess we could do vocalists. I don't know, but what did you guys think of it?
Go ahead, Dave.
Say what?
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, well, I've liked the concept of what we've been doing because it's been really good to focus on specific instruments and artists that do that. And I get it. I think it's a great way to explore other types of music and hone in and listen to different instrumentation that we don't normally listen to. I think I heard something just the other day on Facebook or somewhere where somebody was saying they were like a musician, and in the band, one of the players tried to tell him, hey, really everyone is mostly just listening to the song and the lyrics and the vocal. They're focusing on the vocal, but yet the band members like, yeah, but we're trying to get this, this one part where we do the bridge and hey, isn't that cool when we do that guitar part? And as much as people you might think they're into that, they're not. They're listening to the song, they're listening to the lyric, they're listening to the vocal. And he finally realized that over many years that, yeah, we're trying to perfect all the instrumentation, but the reality is when people are gigging or they're in concert or they're doing whatever, 95% of it is just we're listening to the song, the vocal, and we don't really focus on the other stuff. So this was a good exercise for us to kind of focus on the other instruments.
I agree, and we piggyback on that is that like you said, there are a lot of unsung heroes out there that have made some fantastic music, and again, we're not the ones that are like enlightening anybody on this, but it's fun to go back and talk about them and relive those, and and we get to rediscover them as well, and hopefully those who listen, even if it's just us, we get to learn some stuff about these guys, which I think is fantastic and lays a foundation. And I always find it, yeah. And the ones that we do talk about, the great ones that transcend, they truly transcend it because let's face it, most of these, the backbone of all rock and roll groups is the rhythm section, and especially the drummer. And so it's a fun exercise, and I guess we could talk about eventually those that we didn't include because we always have that. But yeah, I thought it was a great exercise in understanding. Let's face it, it takes a whole. Most of these guys are just part of a collective group of talented musicians. So.
And I agree with what you said about the rhythm section, which I guess includes the bass too. Those and I guess could at times be the piano. I mean, even like in the Who, when you have a band where sometimes the bass player and the drummer are both just like going off, Pete, the guitarist, or maybe even Roger with his voice have to kind of be that backbone. And I just think what I really liked about this is yeah, the unsung heroes. Well, people who know them know them. They are appreciated out there. That some of them who aren't in the Hall of Fame should be in there, but that they can shine like that too, not just be that, but that they can bring so much more. And I I can't think of any, the only drummer I can think of right now besides you mentioned Buddy Rich, or they're all like not so much in the rock music. But if we sat here talking for a little while about some bands, this kind of same thing will come up. These people that if they weren't there, those bands wouldn't be what they are, even though we may not even know their names. So I'm I appreciate drummers, bass players, and of course guitarists, piano players. So I'm glad we've been able to do this. Maybe we'll do another one, maybe not. We'll see. But yeah, so that wraps it up for this playlist. And I don't know that we know what we're doing next, but we'll have something great, I'm sure. So everybody take it easy.
Yeah.